I'm Simon Sporter, and today we've got Greg Pople with us. He is the safeguarding manager from the LTA. Welcome,
Hello
Greg.
there. Thank you.
Very nice to have you with us. And Greg's going to tell us more about his role and more about safeguarding at the LTA and how they support clubs and venues in both tennis and paddle. So, Greg, let's start by finding out a bit more about what your background is in tennis and paddle.
So, thanks, Simon. Not a lot in tennis and paddle, but I'll tell you how I got to that journey. I've been a parent and a volunteer in a number of sports and in public sector as well. So, athletics, football, basketball, and scouting. And so, sports and safeguarding has been a big part of my life. And so, I understand how it works with volunteers and parents in the sport. I got into tennis around 2018 because I retired from public sector working, and I was excited and impressed by the work that was being done around safeguarding and their vision and their journey in the LTA. So that's what brought me into tennis and safeguarding, really.
Okay. And how you got into safeguarding anyway, but were
Hmm.
you, if you like, is it your passion? Is it your interest? Is it your job? How
Yeah, yeah,
do
it's
you
all of
enjoy
those.
it? Do
Yeah,
you enjoy it? In effect,
yeah.
enjoy the role.
No, I do, Simon. It's all of those things that you described, really. I've always worked in public sector since 1988, so 35 plus years before coming into the sport. And in the public sector, it was around helping people and working with public protection, domestic abuse matters, child abuse, and safeguarding and vulnerable people. So all of those things shaped my career for over 20 years of my 30-year service around helping vulnerable people and children, which led me the transition was just seamless into safeguarding and working across multi-agency partnerships, and then more recently into sport. So yes, it's a job, but it's been in my part of my life for so long now that it's something that I take very seriously.
Okay. So let's now, excuse me, let's move on to the safeguarding role.
Hmm.
So what is the safeguarding role, say, for a county officer and or club venue officer as a volunteer, which they will be in most cases?
Sure. Good question. They're called two different things, so that's not to mislead you. County safeguarding officers are CSOs, literally as a county safeguarding officer. And you're right, they are mostly volunteers. But the safeguarding officers at venues are known or labelled by us as welfare officers. Doesn't mean to say it's not safeguarding, it's welfare, but that's their title that they have. Now, it's really important to say that they're responsible for promoting safeguarding within their venue, whether it's in a county or a venue setting, and it's about promoting that safeguarding and working with others, such as committee coaching teams, whether you have a YPWA there, a young person's welfare ambassador, and it's working with those people at their venue or county to create a safe and inclusive environment. Now, the reason I say that's so important, Simon, is something that we get asked a lot, and I like to stress a lot, is that as a welfare officer or a county safeguarding officer, you're not required to investigate safeguarding concerns. Instead, what you should be doing is reporting concerns to us, raising them to us as the experts, so that we can lead on any investigation and provide support and advice to venues and to counties. Sometimes smaller matters, we would advise a county or a venue to pick it up and investigate it. But first and foremost, never think you've got to investigate it as a safeguarding officer. You come to us so that we can support and advise accordingly.
Okay. So before I come back to sort of on that question,
Hmm.
what who needs to have a safeguarding officer? Does every club and venue need a safeguarding officer?
Yeah, so every county should. County organisations has a county safeguarding officer, and then every registered tennis venue. So every venue that's registered with the LTA should or has to have a welfare officer in place as part of the safeguarding standards. But I don't want to stop at that, if that's all right. Yeah, just to say,
Sure.
if there are non-registered tennis venues, it's not stipulated that you have to have a welfare officer, it's extremely good practice to have one. And I used to work out in the field as such as a regional safeguarding officer before I became the case manager. And I would have some venues that if they weren't registered, they still decided to have welfare officers because they thought it was good practice as a model to have someone there to be the expert and the conduit for safeguarding to the LTA.
Okay, and can a safeguarding officer fulfill the role for various clubs and venues, or do they have to only do it for the one? Can they
No,
be shared around in effect?
yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, they can cover across various venues or county, and we see that a lot. There is a welfare officer description role on the website, and that's important because there are some caveats. So a coach or a member of a coaching team or related to a coaching team shouldn't be a welfare officer because there's a little bit of a conflict of interest. So there is a description. If you're ever unsure, have a look on the website. It's on there. But yes, you can go across various venues or counties.
Okay, and how does the LTA initially support a welfare officer? You've described that there's a job description or a role description, more importantly. Do you help with some training, some initial training? Do you uh, hold webinars where you can sort of support these volunteers?
Yeah, absolutely. You've answered quite a lot of that for me, so you're probably aware, Simon. But yeah, just to go through a couple of those things. When somebody comes in new as a welfare officer, they receive a welfare officer induction session, and there's actually going to be one of them at our conference, which I'll touch on later. So new welfare officers receive an induction session on as to how to take up the role. But then there's the people who are in place and how often you receive that continuous professional development. I know it's not professional as a paid role, but that's a big thing that comes up in serious case reviews into children when organizations don't continue their training so that people are refreshing. So there's a whole host of things available around support and training for welfare officers. There is induction sessions, as we've just touched on. There's engagement activities in the regions. So our regional safeguarding officers run regular engagement sessions and activities with welfare officers and county safeguarding officers. That includes forums, and then we also have our national conferences, of which I'll chat about later. There's also additional support to that, not just the training thread, Simon. There is safeguarding support visits. So registered venues receive bespoke safeguarding support visits from regional safeguarding officers. And that is, although it's to look at the safeguarding standards, it's to support the welfare officer and advise them through to what they have in place and what they need to do around safeguarding and the standards in the LTA. They can also quite simply contact their county safeguarding officer if they want advice, or even our regional team our central team where I work. So I'm one of 5 people who work in the central team, both managers, case officers, and the head of safeguarding. And there is a simple email address where you can just contact us and we will give you advice through that as well. There's also additional training if you'd like me to talk about that as well.
Yeah, you can tell us. Yeah.
Yeah. So when after the induction session, welfare officers in the rule of thumb need to complete 3-hour training course every 3 years. It's online, but it's classroom training. And if they do that every 3 years, that keeps them updated on their professional development as such. We are looking as the safeguarding team to create a new portal for welfare officers in the near future, which will allow welfare officers and county safeguarding officers to access details on their training and their DBS updates, for example. And it gives them that option of completing continuous professional development beyond just the conference and engagement events. There's other options and other opportunities as well, rather than just attending a course every 3 years. So watch this space for that in the near future.
Okay, that's great. So a volunteer taking up the role, it
Mhm.
may appear daunting. Once they've had the training, how do they, which would include when to report a case, I assume, but for me, if they receive an issue,
Yep.
how do they decide whether to report it to you as the LTA to escalate the issue or to try and deal with it in-house and say, this isn't something which needs to go any further? That sounds to me like quite a challenging area.
Sure. It's only challenging if people want to make it challenging for themselves, because we deliver a very simple, consistent message, and that is, some of your listeners may have been at the conference last year and they would have heard me labor on this, on the case study scenarios that we went through, and that is, every concern you have about safeguarding, you should report to us in the LTA. And the reason we say that, and a lot of it is covered in their training as well, Simon, you're right to say, is that it shows that you're a piece of a larger jigsaw. You don't know what else is going on or has gone on with a family or a child or an adult at risk without reporting to us. And the danger is if you think it may be a lower level matter, for example, and you think that you should just deal with it in-house, you may not be aware of a bigger piece of the jigsaw that could lead to different direction. So it's a really simple message that we deliver every time, and that's, if you have a concern about a child, that's someone under 18, or an adult at risk, someone who is in need of support services, you should report to us each time. And there's two methods for that. There's either through the link on the website where it's a report a concern, or if in doubt that you think, yeah, but it might not be an actual formal concern, you can email our generic mailbox, which we are monitoring constantly throughout the day, every day on working days. And we come back to you very quickly on that. So I think the message I'm trying to say is, please don't ever try to keep it within yourself, because we do get some cases sometimes, and I don't want to sound critical of venues, especially when they're volunteer led, but we do get some cases, Simon, sometimes when we hear about them 3 months later when they've escalated. And a
Yes.
club has tried to manage it at a local level firsthand until it's escalated. Always share it with us. And back to what I said earlier, we will then decide whether it needs to be a formal investigation or whether we can advise and support easily on a lower level matter. So we're here as your professional friends, as simple as that.
Okay, thank you, Greg. So you've been teasing us about your conference.
I have.
The conference is on, as we know, on the 4th of October this
That's right.
year. And I know you've held it previously. I've
Mhm.
attended parts of the conference historically. But this year, I think you're trying to do it a little bit different in that, to me, as a non-safeguarding officer, when I attended last year, some of the things I found quite sort of beyond my knowledge, if you like.
Yeah.
I think you have now identified with that, and you're looking at new things. So maybe you can describe it.
Yeah, quite right, Simon. Thank you. Yeah, you're right. We've held the conference for the last 4 or 5 years. They've always been a real success in the feedback we've got, but we pride ourselves on taking that feedback and making it better next time. And the one thing that we're really focusing on for this conference is opening it up to as many people across the spectrum as possible. And what do I mean by that? Predominantly, most people who have attended have either been welfare officers, county safeguarding officers, and some coaches with a couple of officials. Now we're opening it up to parents, to volunteers of all types of volunteers, not just welfare officers and CSOs. We're opening up to children and young people. We're opening up more to coaches and officials. And we're doing that for we're doing it for one reason. And how are we going to do that? So the reason we're doing it is, I think we've discussed before, Simon, is there's a lot of people in tennis who may not be in the official roles, will be a little bit nervous or concerned, anxious probably about safeguarding and what it means. And it's easy for me because I've been in it for 30 years, as you've heard. So the reason we're opening it up is to make it a safe space for all people coming in at any level. Doesn't matter how big or how small, how much you know about safeguarding or how little, because we want people to come into that safe space and learn more about the sport and safeguarding within the sport across all facets, including young people. Now, the way we're doing that specifically this time is we've got a really, really exciting packed agenda. In the morning, there'll be 4 straight sessions, but in the afternoon, you get to choose 2 sessions that you'd like to go to. And we've tailored them from a really basic level for anyone who doesn't know much about safeguarding at all, who wants to learn at the basic level, all the
Yeah.
way up to specialist advice. Now, specialist advice from expert speakers such as Lucy Faithful Foundation, and I could name others, but they'll be on the registration site, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But that, and then we've got some tailored sessions specifically for CSOs or for venues, for coaches, for children, for officials. So we've opened it up to so many people, and we've made sure that our agenda is specific to all of those walks of life and all of those levels of skill or awareness with safeguarding. So you can come and learn without having this fear of what safeguarding is about.
So in effect, somebody can come along who is just a volunteer in tennis and paddle to
Yep.
find out more and to feel by the end a lot more confident about the whole area. And if, for example, they were a chairperson at a club, it would help them to then recruit a safeguarding officer because they would find out more.
Absolutely, really well put. Yeah, and one really important session that we're running is to meet the safeguarding team. So if you've got people like a chair or another volunteer within a club who hasn't actually had any dealing with us and might be a little bit anxious about that, they'll get to meet the whole team and they'll get to see who's who and have a bit more of a human side to it from us so we can celebrate our successes with them.
Right. So I'm going to put the link on to follow this video, but how do people find out more? Do they just apply now at this point?
It's imminently due to open. We were just confirming the agenda, so we didn't want to send it out without having everyone confirmed. So over the next couple of weeks, you can actually find information out on our website, but what I can do is provide a registration link.
Perfect.
I can send that to you, Simon, so that can be available on the video. Anyone who would like to go on it can go straight onto that link to log into the link, and then that would register them. And a really good thing about it as well, if you don't mind me just saying briefly, is if you register on that link, you remain part of that registration. So last year's people who all signed up are automatically invited to this year's. If you can't attend the whole day or some of the day, because it is an online event and it is on a Saturday, the 4th of October. And it's a really heavily packaged event, of course, because there's so much subject material. But if you can't attend it all, you can just drop in for a couple of sessions. And because you've registered, you can then watch the link later on as well, later on in the year, not
Yeah.
just that day. So please don't, if you're thinking, oh, I may not be flexible enough to be able to do the whole thing, then you don't need to. Registration's the important thing. Attend for some or all of it, equally as good.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Greg, for joining us today. Look forward to coming back soon and look forward to seeing you on the 4th of October.
You're welcome. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, everybody.